So it's a date for your diary. The event has a different format this year with a later start time and a later end time to encourage as many people as possible to attend. If you would like more information on the conference, visit toysforengineers.ie. So I suppose, first of all, my name is Deirdre O'Gorman. I'm the marketing manager here in Walton Institute in SETU. Thank you all so much for attending. As we all know, AI is very much the hot topic at the moment, as is evident from the number of you registering for this webinar and our previous ChatGPT tutorial we hosted a few months ago. The purpose of this webinar is really to introduce you to AI as a whole. And I don't want to say to break down the noise of AI, because that seems to be what everyone is saying. AI is one of those topics that we're all still trying to understand, and it's constantly changing and evolving. But really, I suppose Philip is going to help you understand what is required from a business perspective before you consider applying AI capabilities or applications to your business processes. Philip O'Brien here is a tech lead here in Walton, and AI is his bread and butter, really. He's worked on a number of projects, specifically in the area of healthcare, where AI has been in the foundation of many solutions, from monitoring people with dementia to remotely identifying depression markers using federated learning in people that have undergone cancer treatments. I hope all this is accurate, Philip.
Yeah.
The EU-funded project Philip is currently involved in is Precise. It's a €23 million project led by Gary McManus here in Walton Institute. And it's dedicated to advancing biomarker research and ensuring clinical implementation to improve patient care. Again, AI is at its core. Philip he's supported companies through our ICS Technology Gateway as well to enhance their technological capabilities. So he's definitely the right man to talk to and the right man to listen to. But this really is just an introductory webinar. There is so much more that we can delve into. At the end of the webinar, we have an opportunity for you to scan a QR code and get in touch with us and get in touch with our Gateway team. And there's also an opportunity to learn more about a digital maturity assessment, which I'll chat to you again about at the end. So before I hand you over to Philip, please feel free to pop a question into the Q&A box at any time, and we'll answer all questions at the end, but the Q&A box is open there for the duration. So thank you, and I hope you enjoy the webinar. So over to you, Philip.
Thanks, Deirdre. Hi, everyone. Thanks for giving up your time and your attention, I suppose, for the next while. It's my first time doing one of these webinars, so bear with me. I'm going to try and make it hopefully as useful to you and as engaging as I can. I know it's always not the easiest when it's done virtually like this, but we'll try. You might have attended similar presentations before, so I'm trying to shape it a little bit differently. Of course, we have a real range of people from different industries here, and it's important to keep it somewhat high level, but I think sometimes when things are kept too high level, you just see the same thing again and again. So I've tried to put in some different things, and we'll see if we can make it interesting. So I think Deirdre gave a nice introduction to me there. Yeah, I tech lead at Walton Institute. AI and healthcare is kind of my bread and butter. So I've worked with a lot of different companies, research projects, SMEs, company of all sizes, of how they would leverage machine learning and AI. For anyone that doesn't know about Walton, just very quickly, we're an international research institute hosted by SETU. Very popular, or very successful at winning research funding. So over €145 million funding raised since we've been founded. We work in a lot of different areas, as you can see here, but our kind of remit is smart everything everywhere. So there's in all the different verticals we'd look at, we see how we can essentially apply machine intelligence to what we're doing. So AI, it's funny, I've been working in AI for maybe 10 years, and like neural network design maybe 8-9 years ago, and people were beginning to hear about it. And like, AI is around a long time. AI goes back to the 50s essentially, even maybe a bit before that, and it's had peaks and troughs, and it's come and gone. But there's a different feeling to it at the minute now. It's daily in the papers, it's on Twitter and Facebook, people see it everywhere. We've had an increasing amount of businesses coming to us. It started maybe 5 years ago. I think there was an uptick in people wanting to see how they'd leverage AI, which I guess is why people are here today. And hopefully we'll shine some light on it. But real simply, there's a load of different definitions out there, but one that you could find useful, I think, is it's software essentially that learns from data to predict, decide, and create, often very fast and at massive scale. As with all things, there's an awful lot of nuance in that. There's an awful lot of things it can do. There's an awful lot of things it can't do. Just for a bit of context, there are a lot of AI bros out there in the space, following on from crypto bros, unfortunately. There's a lot of people that really massively overhype AI. The companies behind it overhype it at times because there's so much money involved. And I am not one of those. So I gave a talk, July 2020, I think it was, on a previous healthcare project we were working on. And we were leveraging a lot of AI within it. And at the time, GPT-3 had been announced, and there was this massive hype around it at the time. Um, and I was very critical of it in my slides. I have come to use LLMs daily now, but at that point I was very critical. I still think there's a lot of overhype, so I'm not someone trying to sell AI as snake oil. I think it has great applications in a lot of areas, but it's a tool. So I hope you can give a bit of trust to what I'm going to say. I'm not trying to sell AI on anyone. I'm not hyping it. I'm not telling you today that everyone needs to go away from here and immediately consider how they can get AI into their business. Um, but what do I mean when I'm talking about predict, decide, and kind of create? Quick examples are, so Netflix predicts what your next binge is going to be. Stripe decides if your transaction is fraudulent. And then Canva increasingly using AI for creating social media graphics, web content. Um, these are three very different business applications, but it's the same underlying technology under the hood. And there's many, many more besides. Why now, I think, is one thing. When I mentioned AI is around a long time, why are we seeing it more now than we would have 5, 10 years ago? Why does it seem to have passed a critical threshold? Really, there's a couple of key points, and it's the massive amount of data we've created by moving our lives online. So, advent of the smartphone, the internet before that, but then the smartphone, and then social media. This every little touch point during the day, we're creating this massive amount of data that is gold for training large AI models. The cost to do that over the same kind of time frame has collapsed massively. So you can spin up very powerful GPUs to train models at, the price of a lunch now versus a six-figure sum that would have been 5 years ago. And then, so open models, there's a lot of enterprise grade AI. And I think one thing I don't have here is kind of the ChatGPT moment, right? So this webinar isn't a ChatGPT webinar. I do touch on it a bit later. But I think one of the big ones is people that were not necessarily embedded in tech would use something like ChatGPT when it started getting good, and there was a bit of an aha. There was a catch on here in the zeitgeist that this is something different and this is something maybe very useful to me. So when I talk about the AI landscape, when you hear about ChatGPT, and there's similars, you might know them, but if you do, there's Claude, there's Grok, these are LLMs, large language models. They're the things that you chat to and it gives you something back. There's image creation and there's code creation. So that's all under the umbrella of generative AI. That's the one that's really taken off recently. But there's a whole suite of very powerful AI and machine learning that lives underneath that. That's predictive AI, process AI, stuff that can forecast, stuff that can automate. These things are around an awful long time. So a lot of times over the last few years, people might think, how's AI going to impact my business? And they come with the mindset of all this generative AI stuff that they're seeing day to day. But actually, there's probably an awful lot underneath that could give a much better ROI for your business. So I'm not going to try and touch on all of those because really there's not much that AI can't in some way maybe impact. So I don't want to put a big list out of, oh, in this industry it could do this, and this it can do that, and this can do that. I don't think that's that useful for people. I think you might have seen something like this before. It's useful, but it kind of starts halfway up the mountain. So this is not something I've create this stuff exists online a lot, and it's about, what's the analytics maturity pyramid? When do I need AI? Over the last few years, I've had people come to talks like this and say, should I hire an AI engineer? And should I? And I think they get swept up in the hype sometimes that it misses the most important foundation of how AI might impact your business. And that is defining a real business problem. So when people come to me through the gateway or through some other engagement with Walton, really I try and park AI for a second, because if you come in and say, "Oh, I want to begin using AI," it's the wrong way to kind of frame your approach to this. I think the most beneficial way to frame it is you have to really look, and I'm sure you do this day to day in your businesses anyway. It's the whole point of running a business is properly defining that problem that you need to solve. So instead of saying I need AI for customer service, look for the pain point and look for a measurable impact. So I need to reduce response time for routine queries from 24 hours down to 30 minutes. That would save me 20 hours a week. You need to begin thinking like that of how I'm going to, and I'll give some kind of checklists at the end of this for when we go away from today of maybe how you might approach those things. But it's very easy to get caught up in wanting to just bring in AI. So um, this might mean a lot of different things to different people. And I know there's people here from all different industries today. So say you're an engineering firm, this pain point might be generating compliance reports that are otherwise really onerous to do. Can I some way automate that? Probably can with LLMs. Hospitality, can I handle common guest queries? I don't know, could I automate translation of menus or a help book that we might have in a hotel? Accountants, again, policy documents, summarizing client communications. There's a real different pain point in all these different industries. Um, there was one example. Stanford did a big study that I reference later about how how AI can be used to kind of innovate and ignite a bit of creativity. And they did work with I don't know, what do they call them? The forest rangers, forest parks in America. And it was showing totally non-technical people how they might leverage AI. And one park ranger said if they have to get something into one of the lodges, there was this long procurement process they had to go through. And using ChatGPT, he built a tool himself in a couple of days that automated that really painstaking document creation process. And all of a sudden, a couple of days to a week of every month was now saved because he just automated it with no coding background. So he approached that by not looking to bring in AI, but he looked at what's the thing that's a pain in the ass for me on my day job. And if I could get rid of that, how much time would I free up to do the things that really push my business forward? Um, Following on from that, defining a problem is very important to have a data reality check. Um, and what I mean by that is, what data are you currently capturing? How clean is it? Who owns it? Do you have rights to use it? How accessible is it? People might think they have a lot of data, but then it turns out that data is written on paper, which isn't a blocker, but it means there's extra steps you're going to need to do to make that actionable. Um, I remember maybe 6 years ago, there was a really interesting startup that came to do some work with us, and they had some really great ideas about how AI could be leveraged for what they were doing. Um, but when we dug into this data problem, it turned out that they really were not, first of all, they weren't capturing enough data for all their different customer interactions. But for the thing they wanted to do, they had nowhere recorded the data that really would have helped leverage an AI model. So their takeaway was they needed to go away for, 3, 6, 9 months, whatever it could be in terms of how much data you're creating, and make sure you're now gathering that data in a way that could feed into one of these models. Um, and I think that's a big one for a lot of companies, that we can easily assume that we're capturing the right data because we speak about it in the business and we have something like it recorded somewhere. But it's a more rigorous process you need to go through. And places like Walton, we can, I would always say, come and have a chat with us, because I think this is what we're very good at. You're very good at defining the business problem. We can help refine that, but then digging into, okay, how could we begin solving that problem with the data you have? And if you don't have that data, what would be the advice we would give or someone else would give to try and get it? Um, and then once you get the data together, it's, what's your implementation path? And this isn't even an AI one. I think this is a general software or even software agnostic one of, build versus buy versus partner. So you could build it yourself, custom. I would not advise that, and I don't think there's any need for that anymore. It's very expensive. There's a lot of upskilling. Unless you're doing something incredibly unique, most of these sort of automation and processing problems have been solved by someone else and largely commoditized by tools that don't cost a lot to run. So you could just buy it off the shelf, or you could partner with some consultancy. You could come and talk to Walton and the Gateway, and see how we would work together and put a plan in place. I would hold back from the build. As I said, when people asked me before, should I go and hire an AI engineer? I would say absolutely not, unless you're doing something incredibly unique. Um, so pitfalls, though. So this is the kind of opposite side to a lot of the hype and the success stories, of which there are many. And this is one of, I think sometimes when people want to look at AI, it's a solution looking for a problem, and they get swept up if they see some really interesting demos of some very cool tech and think that then that's a fit for them. But as I said, they really need to begin starting with a business need. Um, People can ignore the human factor, right? They can see it sometimes, unfortunately, as maybe a replacement for some staff that they have, and they jump beyond that. And I think that I'll touch on this more in depth later. I really don't see that's where AI should be used. I think it's a tool and a teammate. It's not something to replace people. It's not something to trust implicitly. Um, there was a cautionary tale from a company not long ago who'd implemented an AI resume screening solution, but they hadn't spoken to the staff that would have done that manually before, and that staff were able to account for bias that they would have seen in the data set and handle that in terms of the screening. The AI didn't have that. They just trained it on historical data. And what happened when it went out was it immediately filtered out women that were returning from maternity leave. Complete disaster, like morally, ethically, PR, technically, because they just didn't speak to the people that were used to working through that process. Um, Data privacy afterthought. So there's the EU AI Act, there's GDPR. I think it's important not to be scared by all the compliance, the things that you might have to face, but to at least approach it with this somewhere in your mind at the start of one of these journeys, in that what am I doing with that data? Do I have rights to access that data? And how am I protecting that data? And anything then comes out of a model I might build on it. These are important things to consider. And success metrics. Sometimes people think they can just run this tool and all of a sudden the output of the tool looks good and it looks like it's getting them closer to the thing they wanted to solve. But if they haven't properly defined what a metric is in terms of how am I measuring success with it, it's very hard to contrast the output of that AI model with what a team of people might have worked on before. So it's again, I think people need to define real measurable outcomes up front. Um, Risks of using AI at work. So I touched on some of these, but one of the biggest ones I'll touch on, and from someone who uses AI daily at the minute, treating AI output as fact. So models like this can be seen as very powerful, and they often are, but they can also do some of the most stupid things, but they can do it with such confidence that people trust it. If you're a company that isn't used to using tooling like that, it's easy to make some pretty critical mistakes by integrating it into your workflow and trusting what it outputs as fact. So I would, yeah, I suppose it's a good thing in life in general, but I would treat it all with a degree of skepticism. Treat it as a teammate you're working with. If a teammate gave you something, you don't just implicitly run with it. You should be used to analyzing it critically, and I think that's very important with AI. Pasting sensitive data into public models. So there are a lot of these models, and it might be a concern of people if they use a ChatGPT or Claude or whatever it might be. If you paste stuff in, technically, so companies like Claude will say that they don't train it on the data. OpenAI will tell you there's a little button you can click asking ChatGPT not to retrain its model on your data. There's quite a lot of nuance in that for businesses. So say on ChatGPT, for example, you might see sometimes if you're conversing back and forth, you might get a little pop-up saying, are you finding this chat helpful? And it's like a thumb up or a thumb down. if you click one of those to thumb up or thumb down it, part of their terms and condition is now what you've spoken about in that chat can be used for them to retrain their models because it's something that they've tied in with their feedback mechanism. And you might have think, well, no, I'm not sharing that data. And there'll still be some stuff on these on the websites around these companies about how we protect all your data and we'll do our best to make sure nothing leaks out. But it is still always a risk that you're essentially giving over your information to it. So like very, very tightly controlled IP or something with the ethical consideration, or if you have real user data, I would proceed with a lot of caution with stuff like that. Don't take my word on any of it. I would do your due diligence, but if you're using it or if your employees are using it, and I would think it's safe to assume a lot of your employees probably are using these models. Um, it's good to have some process and guidelines in place about what gets shared and what doesn't get shared and how you treat that whole area. Another risk of AI at the minute, I think, and it wasn't really a risk with the more manual models you have to build and train for your forecasting and your automation. But when these interactive models like LLMs, there is a risk, I think, of outsourcing too much of your thinking. There's a camp of people that are quite critical on this. I don't agree with it, but I think if you do it without having that critical frame of view, if you just give everything over to a model and whatever it gives back as an output, you run with it then the rest of your business. You do risk, I think, yeah, maybe dumbing down a bit of the skills that your team have fought hard over years of experience to build up. I think there's a bit, if done badly, there is a risk of atrophy, I think, to critical thinking. But I'm going to show some stuff later, I think, that how we can try and get around that. And using tools people don't understand. So that is a big risk that people jump into this and they start using it in ways that maybe it shouldn't be used. So, it shouldn't replace human thinking. I think people should use it as a tool, but don't trust it, pressure test it, use it as a teammate. Risks of it. So this was a output of one of the image generation ones that went viral before. It was asked to create a photo of salmon swimming up a river. You could see the output isn't great, unless it was done for comedic effect. But when people and businesses automate a lot of, say, their content delivery, maybe content delivery over email or social media, if they were to wire up prompts, quite easy to do, to wire up a prompt to generate an image for this text, create an email on it, send it out to this wait list of people. If you don't have a human in the loop in that, it doesn't take many of these. It might just take one of these to really diminish trust in your brand. So I would be very careful, again, blindly trusting the automation of it. Another one that did the rounds, and I'm going to show some very impressive stuff from AI in a minute, but there was a test where a lot of these models completely failed to tell you how many ores were in raspberry or strawberry, and it wasn't fully clear why that was. Did it break the word into two? But these models, the way they work under the hood, remember, they're not some super intelligence. They work by essentially looking at the words you give it and predicting the most likely sequence of next words. They can have some really weird little nuances in it. So they are not infallible. Do not trust them fully. Leverage them. I'm going to do a really quick little demo here. And again, this is something that it's not meant to be, oh my God, look how incredible and polished and final this is, and I can take this straight away and use it in my business. But it's an idea. What I was trying to do was very quickly put together something, and this took me start to finish, genuinely less than 5 minutes, using a few different tools, just to try and give you a flavor of what sort of tooling I might leverage for AI. Say I wanted to do a campaign kit. I'm a company launching a new product. I could prompt someone like ChatGPT. I said, act as a launch pack generator. I'm building Acme Eco Cup, reusable coffee cup, keeps drinks hot for 6 hours, cold for 12 hours. There's a million of these in the marketplace. I know we don't need another one of them. As I said, I wanted to see how quickly I could wire up some very loose, foggy idea with some sort of tangible proof of concept. And you would ask the model to, okay, give me back in plain text. launch email intro, LinkedIn post, and prompt for a hero image, right? So the output then was from that simple bit of text, the output I get back was, okay, here's some guidelines around creating an image. Here's your USP. Here's how you'd send out a launch email. And then I go, okay, I'll take that prompt for an image and create the image for me. Again, I think most people with taste would go, I know that's an AI image. That's not the point of this here, right? This part was done in like 5 seconds. These things can be massively improved with a small amount more time. Say then I wanted to take that image and maybe create a little ad around it to go online. I could use something like 11 Labs where I could just write some text and get an AI generated voice to run with it. And again, I should stress that these are free versions of these tools to do this, right? So from that, 2 small prompts of text and photo, combine those into a prompt for a video.
Wake up to the Aroma Brew coffee maker, where every cup is a perfect symphony of taste. Aroma Brew, crafting your morning sip by sip.
Now, again, the point isn't to go, some people might look at it and say, oh, actually, it didn't get the acme perfectly right on the coffee cup, or I didn't like the way the shot panned in from here. This went from a very loose idea to realistic audio and video in about a minute. I think what's very powerful for that with people, and it applies to a lot of different industries, is, and I think this is what I would drive at in this talk, is what's the real power, I think, of AI for business. It's not all these lists of all these myriad applications and different things. I think the power of AI at the minute is to be able to go from somewhat of a vague idea you have in your head to a living, breathing, tangible prototype in minutes versus what could have been days or weeks before. I think that speed up is what the real power of AI for business is. I think that ability for it to get you off a blank page and to have something you can put in front of colleagues and clients, and if it's something you decide to go with, you spend a little bit more time refining it and you get a much better output. But it allows you to go from, like, it's very hard. You sit in a room with 5 colleagues and you're all thinking around something that you want to work on, and people fall in, and it's just human behavior. We fall into the thing that we believe we have shared understanding, but we rarely do until we see that thing popped out of our heads and kind of made manifest. And traditionally that'd be on a whiteboard, and then maybe someone did wireframes, and then they'd have to code it up, and then you get to click at something. And
wake up to the
that takes a lot of time to do, right? So I'm going to click. Let me just see here, make sure I'm sharing the right screen. So say you did that little video and you said, oh, what about building a landing page? I could put a tiny prompt into a tool like V0 here, give it its image, and say, give me a landing page where someone can come in. Sure, you might want to improve that copy, but in a prompt that took me 30 seconds, I've now also got it to give me a working Stripe link. So I have not, for the purposes of this demo, I have not made this one live because this would work and people would be paying me money for a cup that doesn't exist, which wouldn't be great. But a little button like this, a lot of these sites have it, one click and all of a sudden you have a live website running. So you've gone from, sorry, let me get back, an idea to something living and breathing very quickly. But again, proceed with caution, right? So, and you might look at it and go, oh, there was issues with that video, but you can spend a bit more time and see what a video like this would do.
Angela Carter here, live from the Cedar Grove flood disaster. Just kidding, I'm not real. This is Dana Brooks reporting live from Ocean View Beach. Just kidding, I'm not real. This is Charlotte Reed reporting live from Clearwater Beach, where an unidentified... Just kidding, I'm not real.
So you can see the jump from the earlier little video I did to one like this with something like VO. They really don't cost a lot of money. All of a sudden you could have had to outsource to a consultancy company or design company, spend quite a lot of money to get back the first thing that might not resonate with you. I think, again, these tools allow you to in-house brainstorm a lot of this stuff and see what works for you, and then bring in the experts by all means. But I think it saves you a lot of time and money up front by testing this stuff out. So when I talk about AI for business, what's it really going to do for you? I think the speed premium is what I would call it. I think it's a great accelerator. I think that means small teams will thrive with it. It doesn't necessarily have to mean small companies. I think large companies will do better with having small teams because with tooling like this, people can move, good people, and I've seen it firsthand now over the last year, good people can move really quickly from an idea of something they want to work on to a thing that's now living and breathing. And then once you get to that stage, it's much easier to then iterate on it. You shorten these product cycles, you get people engaged much sooner with it. You can do it cheaper than you used to do it before. I think you see it a lot now with company, good delivered fast beats perfect delivered late, right? It's get something out there, get an MVP in front of clients, in front of your C-suite, in front of your teams, go from blank to something working really quickly. And I think the whole point of small teams with this is there's less of that bureaucracy that's going to slow adoption. There's very direct feedback loops. There's people can pivot very quickly with tools like this. As a personal aside, I think we've seen the pandemic sent a lot of us to work from home, and that fully remote has moved to hybrid for a lot of companies. There's a pushback, I think, from large corporates, a lot of pushback from people heavily invested in corporate real estate, you see Dennis O'Brien, etc. I think there'll be another swing the other way back. I think there'll be a growth of remote companies again, of small teams that are able to be very fast and very successful and compete with much larger, slower teams. I think that's what this tooling does for a lot of people. And I think there's a very big opportunity for us in Ireland because we have a very strong tech talent pool. We have a strong talent pool, as there is. There's a lot of really good people in this country. EU market access, there's a lot of government support. So you see the end slide, and Deirdre will touch on it, to work with places like Walton for digital transformation. I think there's a real opportunity here, and whether it's remote or not, but I think that will play into it because the best people will want to work where they want to work. All of a sudden, you don't have to hire locally, you can hire globally. And if you can keep your team small, you cut out some of the communication challenges large companies would face with remote. So I think there's going to be a swing back in that direction. As a takeaway from today, if I was to give like a 30-day kind of AI action plan, I would think spend some time over the first week doing this discovery of what pain points do we have in house? What are the things that really annoy me and slow me down? And we all have them day to day. EU projects for us, there's a lot of admin overhead that just, it has to be done, but it isn't the thing that you're going to make a difference with. It's not the thing that's going to really benefit you and your career and your organization. It's, we have people in Walton working on some really impressive cutting edge research. And if they have to get slowed down in all these documents that the European Commission need, it's a distraction from them. So say from our point of view, that's what I think you'd begin looking at. How can I automate some of that? How can I reduce the time it takes for that? So in-house, I would say, have a look at what are the things that you feel are slowing you down that you'd love if you could just click a button and save a lot of time on. What would that do for you? Once I think and I think we'd all have a lot of those that we would identify, I think try and pick something and then audit that data kind of plan I said earlier of what data am I capturing? Am I capturing enough of it in the right format over a long enough amount of time that would help me automate that thing that I identified in week one? And this can be a tricky bit. So I would say, again, I don't want to keep sound like I'm shilling Walton, but there's Walton and many other places around the country that are good at this. But I think this is something we're very good at, and it's free to have a coffee and reach out and have a chat. I think we can help people at this early stage because it's a tricky one to do sometimes. I know I have all this data, but is it the right data to solve that problem? But there's a lot you could at least do in-house to document what data I'm capturing. Do I have access to it? What are the privacy implications, etc.? And then pick a pilot, pick something small. It doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to be polished. Can I solve a part of that problem really quickly and time bound? Give yourself a week. Maybe get a named owner in your team to do it, take it on yourself. and validate the usefulness of it. Park the thing of it doesn't look finished yet, because previously maybe you would have outsourced some of this to tech first teams or consultancies who are going to give you something back, even as an MVP, that might look very polished already. You're doing this yourself, free or at least cheaply. Don't worry about that stuff yet. You're just trying to see is, can I feed in this data that I'm capturing, and is the output of this model, whether it's an LLM tool or some publicly available SaaS offering, does it move the needle to me to automate that thing that I want to do? And then if it does, that's your decision time. How much time did that take to do over those couple of weeks? Maybe it was a couple of afternoons here and there. How much closer do you think we are to automating that pain point for me? What else can I do to reduce friction? Does it scale? And then, make that decision and figure out what you're going to do next with it. If what you've looked at doesn't show any value in that 30-day time frame, and I'm not saying it's every day for 30 days, but if what you're looking at doesn't show any value, fine, drop it, move on to the next thing. I'm going to give a few closing tips then on how I work with AI and how I think people could work with AI. So again, I did say at the outset, I didn't want this to be something where we're just trying to list all the different very technical use cases and all the different verticals and industries that people should look at performing. As I said, I think personally one of the best uses of AI for all these different businesses at the minute is using the tooling that is getting very popular, which is LLM tooling. It's Claude's, it's GPT, it's Grok. I think the ability of tools like that to speed up how well you work and to free you from a lot of automation is going to be really impactful for your business. So I mentioned earlier there was a large Stanford study done on people around the world using AI in America and Europe, and they surprisingly there's a really good video. I think I had the link somewhere in the side. I don't know if this will get shared out, but if you want the video link, ping me on LinkedIn maybe. They found from their study that actually people were made less creative with AI, which took them by surprise, because they thought, oh geez, I thought this was a positive thing. That's the way we're trying to frame it. And it turned out that those people that were underperforming with it versus the people that were really succeeding by using AI as a tool had a different mindset in how they approached it. When it was failing for them, they were just using it as a tool. Whereas the people that were really succeeding with it, they were using it as a teammate. And there's a real important distinction there. And if they used a tool and they were unsatisfied with the output from it, they took it as a failing of the tool and they walked away from it and said, oh, it's no good. Whereas in your day-to-day practice, you don't do that. If someone you work with gives you something that you need to use, if it's not exactly what you need, you don't just end it there. You mentor them and you give them a bit of feedback, and maybe you needed to provide more context to them about what the thing is you're solving. So I think try and shift your mindset about how you engage with these tools, and don't use it as something infallible. Don't use it as something that has to be right the first time. Engage with it the way you would engage with a good teammate. Give it more context. Often ask it to ask you clarifying questions about the problem unsolved. And I think you'll be quite surprised at the increase you'll get from that. There's an approach they use of, it's important to remember that we can use AI to ask AI things. And there's a shift there that, PowerPoint can't tell you how to get better at PowerPoint, or Excel can't tell you how to get better at Excel. But AI tools like LLMs can actually tell you how to use them better. And in that Stanford talk, he gives this as a very interesting prompt for people that want to start leveraging AI in their business. So you're an AI expert. I would love your help in consultation, blah, 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 blah. Ask me a question or time until you have enough context about my workflow, responsibilities, and you can tweak this a bit for your own business, and ask that LLM how I could leverage AI in my work. And just to prove my point about using AI to ask AI, I took the prompt that they gave, and then I asked it, how would I improve this below prompt? And it's as simple as this sometimes. If I have this thing that I'm thinking I'm going to ask it, preface that with, how would you make this prompt better? Or would you change anything about the below prompt to get the most from it? Or rate my prompt out of 10 and then show me a 10 out of 10 version. And quickly you get back, oh, your prompt is solid and will definitely work. that's a big failing of AI at the minute. They're incredibly sycophantic, so always take what they give you with a grain of salt. There was something went viral only about a week ago where someone was asking AI to give it its IQ score, and you could get it would say, "Oh yeah, I can't give you that score without enough data," and you can give me a good estimate. And essentially, everyone that interacted and shared their output was getting classed as borderline gifted. So they can be very sycophantic. So be careful with it. But you can see here, it took that loose enough prompt. Well, it wasn't even that loose of a prompt. It would have seemed quite well defined, and it gives a much more accurate version, much more powerful and useful version back. So even from my point of view, I dumped it in. I was like, okay, let's see. And you can see here, it came back by asking me, what's my primary role or position? What industry do I work in? And I told it, I'm working in Irish Research Institute, EU research projects, blah, blah, blah. And then it started asking me, what are the real time consuming, frustrating steps for me? And this would go on and on and on until really you get something very useful out of it. So I would say it's a good takeaway for people on this call. Follow a prompt like this. I don't know if the slides are being put up publicly. If they're not, again, ping me on LinkedIn and I'll send you the prompt. Give it a whirl. You give it a whirl for free and get a feel for it. For me, the big take, LLMs are the new rubber duck. So anyone with a software engineering background will get what I'm saying. Anyone else will think I'm talking rubbish here. There was an old method from a very famous software book called rubber duck debugging. So when you have an error in your code, debugging can be a nightmare because you're trying to figure. There's so many different weird little things could have thrown the error that you don't have control of, and we always think we're great. So why would the code I've written create a bug? Yeah. So how do I get to the root of this? And this book, The Pragmatic Programmer, the guy offered up this method of rubber duck debugging because he had a rubber duck. I guess his kids are around and he found a rubber duck at home. It could have been any inanimate object, but it was something that you would clearly outline the problem you're having line by line, step by step in the code. And the point of that was that you can find that solution halfway through the explanation. As humans, we think that we have a very clear grasp of what problem we're trying to define and what solution we might put towards it. But we're really bad with the blank page. And for me, that's how I use LLMs in my day job. And that's how I use AI in my day job at the minute, is I use it as a sounding board that actually gives something back to me. So there's I don't know, I can't attribute the quote because I can't remember who said it, but good writing gives bad thinking nowhere to hide. So if you make sure you get written, and this was done at the time of paper, get down on paper the problem I'm trying to solve and the solution I think will get me there. And the minute you step out of your head and you get it to paper, all the gaps start becoming apparent in it because there's nowhere for it to hide. LLMs are really powerful at this. You can say, there's a problem I'm working on. Here's what I think my solution is. Find me the edge cases in it. Find me the flaws in my assumptions. Propose 3 alternative approaches to it. You can take any of those sort of angles, and what you get back, my point earlier about treating this AI as a business teammate. So what it gives back, you don't just take it face value, because sometimes it can give you 3 alternative solutions that are rubbish, that, they're totally unwieldy for a number of different reasons. But the very act of you seeing that written down and conceptualized, I think, and it is my opinion, but I think it boosts your own thinking of the problem again. You always end this with, what's my take on it, and how do I feel I need to go forward, and have I critically analyzed what the AI has done? But I think this tooling allows you to get from the start to there much quicker and much more robustly. This was another thing that came out of the Stanford study about bounded rationality, they called it. So we know striving for perfection can slow us down. And there's a happy point of good enough with something we're trying to do in business. But creativity is doing more than the first thing that you think of. And when you combine that with your interactions with AI, I think a lot of these toolings allow people to go from 0 to good enough very quickly, much more quickly than we ever could have done. I think a lot of people will then stop at that good enough point, because previously it took them quite a while to get there, and they knew going beyond that, chasing perfection was, bad in terms of time and resources and complexity. So good enough is good enough. But I think the real opportunity is not in using AI to get to good enough quickly. It's then to go beyond that, because think of the time and resources I've saved by getting to good enough. Oh my God, now I'm freed up. What could I do next? How could I push this on? How could I make this better? I think that's the real takeaway for it. So I hope that was useful. Might have been a bit different than you were expecting. Thank you for your time. And there's a slide at the end that Deirdre wants to cover, so I guess I'll hand over and then we can do some Q&A after that.
Great. Thanks a million, Philip, for that. That was a brilliant presentation. And there was kind of the two main takeaways that I got from it was, I think, question AI, first of all. A lot of people can take it at face value, and we've seen it ourselves in the marketing department to use it the odd time to review something. But it's only when you actually understand what you're doing and what you're putting into it that you understand what you get out of it. Do you know what I mean? So you can't just take it all at face value.
Yeah, and actually, yeah, I probably didn't articulate that well enough during it, in that what you said there, yeah, it's perfect. It's so if people come this webinar about AI for my business, how can I use it? I would say the first thing is, how are you using AI already for yourself? How are you using it day to day? And if you're not, I think you're missing a stepping stone to then, how could I then use it for my business? And I think that stepping stone of how I can use it personally in my career it's freely available to you. It's or you can spend €20 a month and get access to much more powerful models. I would think if people think there's a room for AI in their business, but they're not leveraging it for what they're already doing day to day, I would advise that as a first step, because take it, don't trust it, see what it can do for yourself to get better at it. And I think that then broadens your horizons through what it can
Yeah,
do.
that kind of brings to another point that you made, was of mentoring. Like, finds, if you don't understand AI, and I don't understand AI, my background isn't tech. I rely on all of you to kind of tell me how to use it. But there's so many different types of AI that I will never use, but that you use in your projects and companies can apply then to their businesses. And I think mentoring is important, and coming to the likes of Walton or any of the other technology gateways or research centres who do not in it to make a quick buck or anything like that. There is actually funding available to companies, which we covered, I think, back in our January webinar, actually. We identified 30 different funding platforms that companies can avail of. So if people want to learn more, they can contact marketing at Walton and we can go through that with you and share information. So thank you so much again, Philip. Before we go into a Q&A, I just want to mention a couple of events and opportunities to you all. First of all is a few events coming up here hosted by Walton and Toys for Engineers, which I mentioned at the start. Most of this information is on waltoninstitute.ie website. If you can find information on it, just contact us here in Walton and we can send you the details. Secondly then is, I think Philip might have mentioned it earlier, I'm not sure. Or I mentioned at the start, actually, sorry, the Entire is a European digital innovation hub that we are leading with Tyndall Institute in Cork. So we currently have an opportunity for just 3 businesses, and this isn't a sales pitch, and it sounds like a sales pitch, but it's just the way the funding actually works for this kind of thing. But we do have an opportunity for 3 businesses to avail of a digital maturity assessment, which basically allows, we will assess your digital maturity level across a number of different areas, which then helps opportunities for your businesses the assessment helps identify opportunities for your business and suitable follow-on supports. So many different companies have come through this method. It's funded through the de minimis state aid, as you can see. There's essentially 0 cost to you, and the paperwork, I think, could be quite minimal as well. Sorry now if I'm wrong on that, but I know that our guys will help you through the application for that. From there, once you have your digital maturity assessment, you can then go on and work with the gateway through innovation vouchers and so on. And one of our IPPs that we're working on with at the moment, one of our companies that we're doing an innovation partnership program with, came through this. So they've done a DMA, it's called, then went on to do innovation vouchers, and now they secured funding through Enterprise Ireland to continue on and do a much bigger project with us as the research institute supporting them. So it might just start an initial conversation with us, but it can lead to a much bigger output in the end. As I said, we have a wide variety of other funding avenues available. Please do get in touch. Scan the QR code there to complete the form and opt in if you want to hear from us. This sounds like a sales pitch, and I really don't mean it to be. I'm just reading from something that someone sent to me earlier. But if you want to receive a copy of the slides or the recording, again, scan that QR code and just put in your information, and we'll send it out to everyone. Instead of sending a blanket email out to everyone, and then it might end up getting stuck in your junk and you won't see it. So if you do it that way, it's a much easier way for us to get in touch with you. And we won't
Don't steal my great coffee cup idea, though.
we won't, we promise. But we won't contact you beyond that in line with GDPR, obviously. You won't get added to any newsletter. So I think that is everything. If there's a couple of questions there, Philip. There's a great presentation. Which platforms are you using for the various examples, e.g. product launch and AI video, etc.?
So yeah, thanks, Aaron. The product launch was ChatGPT. The AI video was Sora, which is essentially in ChatGPT. If you're in ChatGPT, and I think you have to pay the €20 a month, I'm not certain on that one, you get access to Sora, they're all open AI ones. The much more realistic newscaster one was VO, which is Google's DeepMind crowd. So it's not one I've actually used yet. I was trying to do something very quickly before this with it, but I ran out of time. And then the speech generation was a company called 11 Labs. So yeah, the ChatGPT for AI and the prompting and the text, and then 11 Labs just for the speech. And then I just used iMovie on my desktop just to throw one on top of the other. So start to finish, 5 minutes.
Great, thank you for that. And then another question from a teacher. Is there a way to use AI productively in education? And is there a way or a tool to identify if students have been using ChatGPT, etc., to produce homework? That's one of those tricky ones.
Yeah.
He's struggling with.
Yeah. Is there a way to use productively in education? 100%. There's so many new topics that we come across, particularly in Walton. So we kind of have areas of expertise, but then you maybe work on a new research proposal, and all of a sudden there's all these different areas that your work needs to interact with. Previously, that was so behind me here. I have a bookshelf with a lot of technical books that are. Joni keeps telling me just to chuck them out because they're outdated now, because this isn't how I learn things anymore. I still read, by the way. There are people online that saying, why would you use AI when you can get, or why would you read a book when you can get AI to summarize it? There's so much more benefit from reading. Please don't do that. But for education, I think it's very powerful because you can ask it to explain you. So if you previously wanted to learn something and maybe you went to Wikipedia and it could have given a very technical explanation that is just no good to you because you don't get it. If you ask an LLM to explain something to you, you can just say, dumb it down, explain it to me like I'm a 9-year-old. And I've done this with really complex technological stuff. And I'd say, okay, explain this to me like I'm 5. I'm like, I've gone that low before on things. And all of a sudden it goes, there's something for me to click onto. And now I can scale up my understanding of it. So I think that's a massive benefit, getting different ways, different formats of something explained to you. Is there a way to identify? There are tools out there. Zero GPT, I think, is one people use, where you can paste in text and ask it, and it gives you kind of a score. There's more expensive ones that are paid for. The tools themselves, you could take something you wrote and paste it in. I know some people then who, if they get that, they're very critical of, he's used ChatGPT. I would think it's such an accelerator, and if it allows you to write something beneficial and you do it quick, like if you just use one of these tools to output something, most people, as I said earlier, with a bit of taste and sense in an area will go, AI slop is the term for it. I know this was just written by an AI, but if I have a very good idea that I'm crafting and speeding up my time to actually getting out in front of people, and I use these tools, I personally wouldn't have an issue with someone using it. There was a meme doing the rounds of, I got one person gets ChatGPT to write the email for them, but then the person receive it gets ChatGPT to summarize the email for them. So what are you doing with that? But at the end of the day, the person's still getting the email sent, the other person's getting the communication from them. So
Once the information gets out there, and we
Yeah.
in the marketing team here do the same, because we get a lot of heavy technical jargon sometimes and we don't understand it, and our job is to translate it. So we have put it into ChatGPT to try understand, or does this make sense? Or when we translate it, we put it in and say, does this make sense if we translate this to this? And it will tell us then whether it does or it doesn't. So yeah, it is. It just kind of speeds up things instead of waiting for responses and so on. So yeah, but I suppose ChatGPT again is just one side of the AI that everyone is using on a day-to-day basis now.
Yeah.
And someone here, Trezan in the forest.ie, thanks for that, Trezan. I wasn't aware of that company. Eureka.ai is a Waterford founded company. It's a brilliant tool to do all sorts of AI content creation for businesses, all in the one platform. No affiliation, just a genuine recommendation. So thanks for that. Does anyone have any other questions, or do you have any other comments, Philip, before we wrap up? And we're just on the hour mark now, which is great.
No, I think I've ranted long enough.
No, that was that was brilliant. You didn't rant. I think it was definitely less of a an overhyped version of AI for business than we've seen. I attended the Dublin Tech Summit last week, and while a lot of private companies were trying to sell their tools and their wares, some of it just got a little bit repetitive and heavy after a while. So I hope this did help companies understand AI and understand AI in their own businesses, and that this is very much an introductory level webinar. If you do want to learn more, please come to us and we'll do our best to support you where possible.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you very much, and I think we will end it there.
Great. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.